Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Mona's Rants. I am your host, Mona Shaikh. You guys, what is happening? It's Tuesday, but it almost feels like a Thursday. I don't know. I think I'm like exhausted already. I'm just tired. I just want to lie down and take naps. But then I lie down to take naps, and then my brain says, we are not napping. Get to work. So here we are. You guys, I am still in Facebook jail. So another 2 days. And then I go back into the matrix of what is known as the Facebook. Anyways, today's topic is about the surge of migrants and children at the southern border. And Governor Abbott of Texas is asking the Biden administration to up its Texas-Mexico border, in law enforcement. And this is becoming a very big part of the conversation because the Biden administration is not being accused and being called hypocritical because he is using pretty much the same cages to hold the migrants and the children that are coming in. So this is a big conversation. They can't even decide. They're like, is it a crisis? Is it a challenge? What is it? So I wanted to invite back my very good friend and the very talented immigration professor, my good friend, Robert Perkins. How are you?
Hey, Mona. Good to see you. How are you?
I'm
doing great.
I'm doing good. I've been watching multiple news outlets covering this, and of course the Fox News coverage is always so different than the rest of them because they had a local mayor from a Texas town come in, and he was leaning a lot more on the conservative side, and he was like, well, they're picking up folks in Laredo, I believe, and then dropping them off in another town, and then dropping them off at bus stations. So he did not seem pleased with the fact that there were migrants and these unaccompanied children coming in. Robert, I want to ask you, how are people sending their children unaccompanied? I mean, I don't understand that part.
I mean, they're pretty desperate, Mona. You have situations in Central America where a parent is confronted with a choice. You have a little boy. That little boy is going to be asked to join the gang when he's 12 years old. And if he joins the gang, there's a pretty good chance he's going to die. If he doesn't join the gang, then he will die because for refusing to join, they kill them. The girls is prostitution, and you either be the gang prostitute, or if you refuse, you're dead. So the parents, I'm a parent. I have two boys. I mean, a lot of parents out there, I imagine, in the crowd, and you've got to be pretty darn desperate to send your kids alone. And you have not only the risks of them going to this, country as a minor, a strange country, but the risks of getting there. And there are numerous instances where these coyotes who smuggle immigrants, rape or murder or put these people, young children, into sex trafficking. So these parents know this, and they take these risks knowingly because the situation is very serious down there.
Right.
So,
right. Is that your phone?
Yeah, let me turn it off.
That's okay.
How dare anybody call me when I'm on the Mona Shaikh show?
How dare they?
How dare they?
How dare they?
How dare.
Robert, this surge that is now taking place, especially of unaccompanied children. Now, this is something that was not happening. Of course, the Trump administration was making it very clear by separating, families at the border, telling people if they're coming in, they have to wait in Mexico. They can't wait in America, in, whatever makeshift tents and, holding cages that they had for these folks coming in. I guess what I'm trying to understand is when you are a parent, just like you said, that is in this desperation, and you're like, there's a possibility that my child will have a better life. So are they just taking their children coming in from South America, Central America? They're traveling all the way from Honduras, Guatemala. They're coming in, dropping their children at the border and then turning around and leaving? Like, what? I don't understand that part.
I mean, normally they're paying other people to do this, smugglers, coyotes, they call them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's happening, and there's a lot of risk inherent in that. I mean, there may very well be, and I'm not aware, that of the specifics of every situation. Situations where parents may, bring the kids close to the border or whatever. But in most cases that I'm aware of, and keep in mind, I deal with the legal immigration system, so I don't deal with the nuts and bolts of the kind of coyote smuggling situation. It's what I hear from folk, from potential clients or others. Um, but most of the time they're relying on other folk who are not necessarily the best folk in the world either. So to me, this outlines the desperation of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
You have a situation where people are coming from south to north. They're migrating here. And they're not migrating here to put their kids into Harvard, okay? They're migrating because these kids are in danger and need our protection. They're migrating because these kids need to eat, and they can't feed their own kids. So the question then becomes, what's the proper response to that? Being an American Jew and knowing the history here, where Roosevelt turned away a ship full of Jewish immigrants during the Holocaust, a large percentage of whom died in concentration camps. That's why we have asylum law. So my mind is this: there's a lot of debate in the law. As a lawyer, I study these things over whether gang violence, because it's not governmental, right, it entitles someone to asylum.
Mm-hmm.
I can talk a little more in detail if you want about that.
Yes, I would love that.
Yeah, there's a line of thinking that if there's a force in a country that the government can't or won't control, like a gang that has control over a certain territory or over the whole country, that someone still ought to get asylum. But in my mind, it really, no matter what, and I think there is a reasonable debate over those things, even though I feel that you ought to be granted asylum, but where I think the real kind of heartstring issues come in is, how do we treat folks, and we're the United States of America. We have this, when we're at our best, we have a reputation of treating people with respect, with kindness and compassion and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So in this particular case, you mentioned cages, you mentioned other things. The question becomes, how do we treat people while they are getting their cases heard, whether they be children, whether they be adults? How do we treat them? And my mind is, you treat them with respect.
Yeah.
You might disagree, Texas. You might say, I disagree. I don't think we ought to have these people. And I think that's a position to take that, even though I may disagree with that position, I'm okay with it from a morals. It was okay, but for us to treat them with inhumanity, to separate kids from their parents intentionally, as was done very intentionally by Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General under Trump, to mindfully basically impose permanent trauma on these children, and to do things like that is just beyond the pale of human decency.
Yeah. Yep.
Let alone the shining beacon of light that the United States is supposed to be.
Yep.
And that Democrats and Republicans, including the venerated Republican Ronald Reagan, even recognized was really what our country is about.
Right. AOC came out and tweeted, no matter what the party, I don't give a shit. cages are never good. They never will be good, and we should never use them. Period. She's like, I don't care what party it is. I don't care what side you're taking. It's just not right. Period. And I 1,000,000% agree with her on that. Right. However, like right now, so I was watching this one video, and they have because people forget that we're still in the middle of a pandemic, right? So you have an influx of migrants and these unaccompanied children coming in, and they found out that about 25% of the folks that are coming in are COVID positive, right? So, which is a pretty significant number if you really think about it. So if the folks have COVID positive, what are they going to do? Are they going to create separate encampments, which I don't think they have, for people who are COVID positive? Okay. And then you're going to keep them there to wait until their COVID passes through, until they get better. Or if they get worse, then are you going to put them on ventilators? So what does that mean? Are they going to be taken to emergency? I mean, so there's a lot of other layers to this issue, right? It's not just holding them in a holding pattern, but there's also, hey, if people are coming in and 25% of them are sick and you just kind of let them through. Ooh, I don't know why I'm echoing. And if you just let them through, and then they're going about like spreading COVID also, right? And they're not getting treatment either.
Right. And I think, I think that I agree with you. It doesn't matter what administration. This is a terrible kind of situation. Yep. So really, though, I think, not to sort of excuse the Biden administration, you can imagine that some of this may have been predictable, that people would come up once they learned that the policies had changed a bit and that they could pursue their claims within the United States, that there might be an increase. So Biden, definitely cannot get an A+ for this response, right? I mean, we have to be critical, even though he's a Democrat and we're Democrats, that perhaps there should have been some preparation. But on the other side of the coin, Biden took over the 20th of January. It's now only March 9th. It's not even 2 months. So I think history will kind of judge what was the response. How long did it take to set up something that was more humane and that made sense in light of the pandemic, right? Yeah. And was that reasonable and humane and all the things that we would want as a country?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is that, now currently when people are getting arrested at the border, so, the coyotes that you were talking about, there was a horrific accident in Texas, and it was holding about, I believe it was about 16 different migrants that were being smuggled in through the coyotes. And when the accident occurred, they got out of the bus and they started running, right? Because they're like, holy shit, now the cops are going to come and all that. Of course, they were running for their lives. And when the Border Patrol came to pick them up, they have strict orders from the Biden administration to not handcuff them and to not treat them like criminals, because they're not criminals. They're just people seeking a better life, right? I'm gonna also compare that to doing drugs is not a crime, okay? I mean, doing drugs is people fulfilling their needs, just like people who are escaping violence and poverty, fulfilling their needs, right? Human beings do whatever it takes to survive, and this is what these folks are doing. But the one thing that I really liked and I was impressed by is the fact that they were not being handcuffed. They were just like, hey, just come on in. We'll give you some water. Come on in. We'll try to take you to a safe place. And that I think I commend the Biden administration for that kind of humane treatment.
Yeah, I think that's if you think about it on a more basic level, what would you do if your neighbor's house was on fire or being robbed or whatever? I mean, how would you treat your neighbor? I mean, you might not be able to keep your neighbor in your house forever, but you might say, hey, you know what? You can stay here for 2 or 3 weeks until the situation gets better, or you could find another place. Sure. So that's my point. I mean, I think there can be reasonable debates about how many immigrants can the United States keep permanently? What are our resources?
Mm-hmm.
And even being a liberal, I recognize there's some good points on the other side in
Mm-hmm.
terms of public resources and everything else. I mean, the problem is that we're having right now is the lack of reality, the Trumpian disreality of facts. It really, to me, it causes a disrespect to the other side, to the Republicans. They actually have valid points that they can make. I mean, there isn't most cases a big drain on public benefits from immigration. There's a lot of reasonable debate on that one, but it's a hard one to win. What is really where there needs to be mindfulness, and this is why it breaks my heart to
Mm-hmm.
see the unreality of the Republicans, because we need a loyal opposition, and vice versa. We need good debate, good intelligence. Schools, public schools.
Right.
Court ruled in 1984 that illegal immigrants are entitled to public education and all that kind of stuff, and there, so there can be a drain on those resources. I've
Mm-hmm.
heard or read somewhere that they're strained, especially here in the Los Angeles area where we live. So again, where the Trumpian unreality is I would like to debate the Republicans and think about how can we as a country solve the school issue, or is it that we need to accept less people, or how is that going to work?
Mm-hmm.
When people are coming from Mars and you're trying to debate them and they're whatever, it just muddles things up, and it doesn't help us to solve what our true policy issues are.
Yeah. There was a family. They had three little kids where they had a brand new baby, boy, and this couple had been waiting at the they got kicked back to the Mexican border, but they came to America. They were here. She was pregnant. She gave birth in hopes that it was going to be an anchor baby for her, that the baby is going to have become a citizen. And this is, of course, this is all out of desperation. This is just people trying to hold on to any kind of safety for themselves and for their children. And then and then the Trump administration threw them back into Mexico, and they had no choice but to stay there. And now that the Biden administration has opened things up, there was a stat they were talking about that a record number. This is the highest number of migrants and unaccompanied children that have showed up at our border in February ever. This is just like the highest number. Robert, I want to ask you, when if you're a president of a South American or a Central American country, do you not have any kind of shame or any kind of couth to be like, yo, people in my country have to leave and go through desperate, horrific, treacherous, dangerous ways just to find safety? I am the leader of this country. How am I okay with my people suffering this way?
Yeah, I mean, why? I mean, the question then becomes why. The countries are poor, so there is a lack of resources on some level. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, maybe some of these folks running these countries need to, greater access to education on public policy and monetary policy and how to grow their economies. I know Mexico has made some really good strides,
Yeah.
and there actually is much less illegal migration from Mexico, and even legal, and even folks that basically aren't interested in coming because the economy there has gotten
So,
better.
yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's one thing to emphasize, because the situation in Central America and south of the border, it's not going to be forever. It's not. And I think history is going to judge us for how we react now, how humane we are now. What do we do now? You can easily see a history book being written about, kids in cages or the separation policy, just like the internment policy of Japanese under President Roosevelt, about how,
Sure.
you know, how that's a stain on our country. And so I think, the proof is in the pudding of how you react to those things. How do you react to those things?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, you're right. I mean, look, it really just really boils down to economics, right? It boils down to resources. Really, that's what it boils down to. I'm gonna take a leap of faith here and say that I'm assuming that there's a lot of corruption that is also happening in these countries, where people who come in positions of power or are in political parties go and suck the money out of the government, right? Suck the money out of the country, fill their pockets, and then peace out, right? And then move on to other countries or whatever, or just live there and rule over the poor, right? And keep them ignorant, keep them uneducated, put them down. And the reason I'm saying that is because I come from a third world country, right? Come from Pakistan. I was born and raised there. I've seen what corrupt politicians do. Now, it's not that Pakistan is a poor country. It's just that Pakistan has incredibly corrupt leaders, incredible level of corruption. You have leaders in Pakistan who, and them and their children, who go around driving fucking Range Rovers. How the fuck are you going to have access to a goddamn Range Rover when a person next to you is eating out of the trash? So it's not so much about resources. It is about the level of corruption and how possibly even how the structure of their government is built out that allows for this kind of corruption to take place, such as in Pakistan.
no question. I think that's an issue, and what scares me is we have the last president who was like a tin pot dictator, and basically was trying to rape the country and put money in his pocket and his family's pocket. I mean, we had some amount of honor prior to that. I'm not saying there was no corruption, but it certainly was a lot less. A lot less. And anyway, there's only so much we can do as a country. We can support human rights. We can support leaders in those countries that are truly democratic leaders that are non-corrupt. There are some things we can give foreign aid. There are some things we can do to help the situation along. It will not be that way forever. Nothing is forever in this world. The Roman Empire wasn't forever. In my time, and I think we touched on this one of the last times we talked, Soviet Union. Who would have thought? People in my generation, nobody thought the Soviet Union would fall. People were claiming asylum from the Soviet Union countries, from Eastern Europe, and it all changed. So eventually, that situation is gonna change. The question again, as I pose, is what do we do in the meantime? As far as the corruption, we do the best we can.
Right.
There's only so much that we can do.
Right. Right. James here has a question. He says, now that immigration policy is changing, can government agencies change quickly, or will some of them, cough, ICE, drag their feet?
That's a good one, James. That's a really good question. Yeah, I mean, there may be some foot dragging. In the end, the agencies have to follow the presidential directives. They know that. And even if some of them may tilt to the right or have a lot of folks that tilt to the right, such as ICE, they know, or most of their leaders, most of the people in leadership know that the Biden is the president. He's the chief executive. So, what happens, or what has happened right now, is that there was so many policies under Trump to destroy the environment, for example, to militarize ICE in horrible and inhumane ways. There are so many of them, it's hard to reverse all of them at once, or to make sure you've tracked all of them. So it's tough. One of my esteemed, revered colleagues, his name is Lucas Gutentag. He used to run the immigrants' rights project for the ACLU. He actually has kept track of all the Trumpian policies, and he's made Biden aware of all this. And Lucas acted as an advisor also to President Obama. So I'm hoping, because I've heard he's kept very good track of this, that we can get all these things changed fast. And some of these, by the way, I want to point out, not only relate to refugees or how to enforce the immigration laws, but even in terms of what I call business immigration, visas to promote commerce and things like that. There have been some horrible policies that have really hurt our country economically, where foreign businesses and entrepreneurs have been restricted from investing in our country. Let me give you one example. Right before Barack Obama left office, about 4 to 5 months before he left, he enacted a parole policy for immigrant investors from other countries that really allowed them to partner with U.S. companies and invest and be able to come here and manage the business. Gone under Trump immediately.
Wow.
And I mean, I guess I shouldn't have been surprised, because Trump was so vehemently against immigration. I mean, but I think, like some people, I thought, well, he's a businessman. Maybe he'll be at least somewhat reasonable with respect to some of these kind of policies, but it just wasn't the case. It was such a hate xenophobia for anyone. I mean, you have investors from Asia, for example, they may not have the 2 million that's needed, but we don't mind 500,000 either.
That's right.
We'll take what we can get and all the jobs that are created with it. So
All right.
you have those policies too, and it's going to take Biden some time to get to it all. But I thank my dear colleague Lucas for really trying to push and keep track of some of these things. So
I mean, I wonder
thousands,
how.
hundreds of thousands of these.
Wow, wow. I mean, just like you said, I mean, Biden it has been in office for what, barely 45 days,
Less than 2 months.
less than 2 months, right? So here he is trying to do the best he can, and what fascinates me is that to me, the one person in the middle of all of this is it is just the absolute demonic representation, and his name is Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell is a fucking demon. To me, he is a very, very dangerous figure, because he's so slick and he's so sly in the way he conducts himself. He'll get up there and be like, "Yep, Trump was responsible for the insurrection," but then you're like, "Hey, are you gonna impeach the guy?" Nope, not gonna impeach the guy. But you said that he was responsible. Yep, I said that. You don't think that this guy's bad for the government? Yeah, he is. So don't you want to impeach him and hold him accountable? Nope. Oh, so if Trump runs in 2024, are you gonna support him? Yep. And you're just like, I wait, what? I'm having a hard time trying to keep track. Oh, you have no morals. Okay, got it. So you have no morals. At the end of the day, for people like Mitch McConnell and Josh Hawley and Matt Gaetz and Mark Rubio and Ted Cruz and Marjorie Greene Taylor and all these fucking demonic humans, for them, at the end of the day, it's about power. It's about how do we stay in power.
I agree. I also want to say, you kind of do your little thing. Which way is the wind going, though?
Yeah.
McConnell's basically, he sees that, Trump still carries those people. He carries the base of the Republican Party, and so he may personally believe otherwise. And I think there are Republicans that do, but at the end of the day, they're going to do what's best for them. There are very few people, that have that profiles and courage to really stand for what they believe in. Even on the Democratic side, people are opportunists, and not every Democratic politician is pure, for sure.
Yeah.
Best one I've seen, Bernie Sanders. I mean, that's it.
Yes.
Always has been very consistent in what he believes and what he stands up for. I
Yep.
mean, I think the problem we don't have a population that's educated in history and that understands. I mean, Bernie Sanders would be considered very centrist and maybe even a little right of center in Europe. I mean, what he actually
Mm-hmm.
believes in, universal health care, for example, free public education and free college. I mean, those things are very mainstream in most Western industrialized countries.
Yeah.
They really are.
Yeah, Robert, I agree with that. My ex is a German scientist. I've talked about him a few times here. He's a nice Jewish boy who grew up in Germany.
Hava
Uh,
Nagila.
Pava Nagila, totally an atheist, and but he comes from a Jewish family, and I was asking him, what was the process for him when he was in Germany, how he got admitted in college, and he goes, the process here is that based on your grades, right? They have a committee that sits up top, and you fill out your college application, and you tell them, and you say, hey, these are my top three choices of colleges that I want to go to, universities, right? And then they look at your grades, they look at how well you've done or how well you've not done. And then, according to that, they determine which university you're going to go to. Now, you and I would look at that as Americans and being like, well, that sucks. Like, I don't want somebody else to tell me what, university I can or cannot go to. But the interesting thing is what they do is they don't encourage kids to go to college for 4 years and party and then come
Right.
out and then be like, I have no skill set. I have a bachelor's in, bullshit. Like, that's what I have. I have a bachelor's in partying and doing bong, beer bong. Like, that's not what your major should be. So their focus is like, look, if you're not scholastically brilliant, then we're gonna send you to a trade school. Like, you're gonna learn some level of skill where you can make a living and be a contributor member of society.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. There is some recognition of that here in the United States, but it's real slow coming. Thank you so much, Aline. Happy everything to you, and I think it's one of my former clients in Florida. But anyway, yeah, there's not as much recognition of that here, unfortunately. One of my dear friends who passed away, it'll be a year in June. She was a teacher here for special needs and was really pushing, 2-year trade schools and that kind of thing. And there's honor in those professions, and those professions make a lot of money. I mean, plumbers make a heck of a lot of money, electricians,
Yep, yep,
all those things. I
yep,
mean, the interesting thing, it ties in with immigration. You get a lot of folks from Europe with those very skills that are fitting
that's right.
those jobs. I mean, I think I'm a Chicagoan originally, and
Yeah.
I immigrated here to California 11 and a half years ago. And my clients in Chicago when I started were Eastern Europeans, Romanians, a couple of them watching now. They rebuilt Chicago. I mean,
Mhm.
Romanians, Polish folks, and people from Mexico as well. They basically took a dilapidated Chicago in the 80s and 90s and completely restored the south downtown area and further south into Chicago, and very hardworking folks. So, yeah, it's going to take some time for us to have those homegrown skills, and we ought to be emphasizing those as well. I
Yeah.
mean, I think we do need immigrants from those parts of the world in the meantime to make sure we have that kind of labor. We have a ton of infrastructure work that needs to be done, and I guess that'll be President Biden's next priority. At least I hope so. And
Right.
I sincerely hope that that they are able to agree on this with the Republicans. It's very sad, Mona. I mean, I guess I'm naive maybe a little bit or too hopeful, but I thought, there's some businessmen in Trump, and infrastructure was something that, well, gosh, a guy that's a developer, he ought to be able to coordinate, especially when he has the majority of the Senate and the House for half the term. And even in the second half, a lot of people agree, but nothing, zero got done. And
Yeah.
our bridges, our roads, all those things are in serious need of repair, and that would certainly stimulate the economy a lot too.
Right. I mean, talk about creating jobs. Talk about getting the work, the law. The working folks back to working, money in their pockets. This whole conversation that the Republicans are always having. Oh well, people are gonna get lazy and they're gonna wait for handouts, and it's like, sir. You're supposed to make barely $120,000 a year, but somehow you're worth millions of dollars. So I perhaps you are the one taking most of the fucking handouts. So let's be very clear about who's really, sending a $1,400 check once or twice is not making anybody rich. Like people are barely getting by here, for God's sake.
No, I mean, no, it's not. As opposed to millions or billions of dollars in tax breaks or interest-free loans or whatever that business is getting. There's got to be a balance, and unfortunately, the balance in the last 40 years or so or 50 years has gone to the 1%. I mean, I truly, to parrot Bernie Sanders a little bit, that's what's really happened. And unfortunately, you have a very angry middle class, and people anger is an emotion. So you got someone like Trump, whose policies have no relation to helping the middle class at all. Yet, a lot of folks, blue collar folks are, supportive of Trump, somehow thinking that they will. I mean, so, and it's a shame. It really is a shame.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
I mean, policies like the Green New Deal is going to generate a lot of middle class jobs, people that make the solar panels,
Sacrilege, Robert. Oh, the Green New Deal. God, we can't mention that. It sounds awful. What? Moving into a place in our world where we don't have to rely on oil and gas? Oh my God, sacrilege, Robert. Ridiculous.
Well, think of how many people that's killed.
That's correct. I agree. This whole Andre here said you're obviously not from New York, sir. We knew he wasn't a businessman. He's a con artist. Yes, I'm from New York. Robert is also a lot more positive about. He has a lot more faith in people than I do. Andre said they don't care about handouts when it's wealthy people. They just hate the poor. Yeah, I mean, look, Trump's biggest concern when the insurrection happened was the folks doing the insurrection were ghetto. I mean, they weren't dressed well, according to him. They made him look bad. It was they weren't decked out in Gucci and Prada when they went in to put their filthy little boots on Nancy Pelosi's desk. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know there was a fucking dress code of like Rodeo Drive in order for them to show up for an insurrection. These are just like you said, these are blue collar workers. They're not, Robert, I wanted to actually make a point about, you were making a point about how Americans are so ignorant about their own history. The reason we're also ignorant about our history is because truth of our country is not taught in our high schools, right? I did not know about slavery as much as I did once I graduated high school, about doing my own freaking research. Like, what we did to the Native Americans. I did not know that they were given fucking chicken pox filled friggin' blankets to like destroy an entire group of people. These things are not taught. They were like, Thanksgiving was awesome. Native Americans came, and then the white people hung on, and the pagans, and they cut a turkey, and they high-fived each other. And it's like, oh, that is so not what happened. So don't you think, Robert, that we need to go back and revisit the curriculum that is taught in high schools to be able to change that? So in order for children to learn what the truth of this country is.
I agree with you 100%. And yeah, people don't want to acknowledge that our history has some pretty horrible things. We all want to be rah 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 rah, about that, and that's not the reality. And the problem is, the reality teaches us some lessons. It teaches us some lessons about humanity and how to treat people, uh, and why things are the way they are for certain people. So it informs us, and then again, you have a reasoned debate. What do we do about these things? It's such a shame in such a rich and powerful country. Why are there so many poor people?
That's right.
And LBJ, Lyndon Johnson, President Johnson tried very much to change that with the Great Society. It had a lot of problems, a little bit of success, but not a lot of success. So where we're missing is, again, the honorable opposition.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we need. We need the Republicans. We need the Mitt Romneys of the world, because uh, we need to see what their points are, because they're coming from reality and fact, and we're coming from the same reality. Okay, he's Mitt Romney, very successful business guy, invested in Staples, and that's the kind of robust debate, not the dystopian unreality kind of thing that we're getting. It's very scary. It scares me as a Jewish person.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of thing Adolf Hitler did, or the kind of thing Joseph. For those of you who came from Eastern Europe, Romania, Nicolae Ceausescu, or Russia, Stalin, and all those leaders. They said, "Oh, let's give the masses a different reality." And so it's a very scary and it saddens me. I have friends that are Republicans, moderate Republican folks, none of whom voted for Trump.
Right.
They don't like Biden. They held their nose and voted for him. I mean, one of them told me, I just didn't vote the first time or whatever. I think she voted for a libertarian, and the second time she knew that Trump was in danger. And you have a mentally unstable person. Why did so many people vote for someone who is uh,
Dement-
clearly has mental health issues? I mean, you know,
Demented. I mean, beyond demented. I mean, Robert, I want to come back to I want to come back to the conversation about the children and the migrants. Like, if you're a migrant, you're an adult. You can, you get your hearing, you get your, day in the court. You go and show up in front of the judge. You present your case. You say, "Hey, listen, I have proof here. I'm escaping violence, or whatever," and the judge grants you asylum or whatever. If you are a child, which that seems to be the case, where there's so many migrant children that are coming in unaccompanied. So they stand in front of the court. How do they make their case? Does the court just automatically offer them asylum, or do they have
no.
to also make a case? They're children. How does
So
a child make a case?
well, first of all, before I get into it, I'll get into. I applaud President Biden. One of the things he has gotten to very recently is to change this situation so that instead of making the case in a court of law with a judge and cross examination, now these kids are allowed to make their case with the Immigration Service in a very casual interview. So you don't have a situation where a judge is questioning a 5-year-old. So thank God, and the president has done a very good job. I think overall, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of rolling back some of these things, I think,
Draconian. Draconian.
yeah.
Yeah.
From what I've seen in the immigration context, I'm curious. I wonder if you can have an environmental person on. I know there are some horrible environmental regulations, but
Yeah.
he's done a really good job of getting to a lot of these things, and this is one of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I mean, it's very tough. You have to appoint some kind of advocate for the child. Child may not be able to express themselves in terms of what may have happened. Um, they're actually uh, and I don't know what the state of this is, just because I do some amount of asylum law. I haven't done any for children, but I know that the children do have a right of counsel in when they do get to immigration court, if their case gets there, and they don't win in front of the officer now. So, so tough for them to make their case for sure.
I mean,
And how far do we go to provide some safeguards or help to try to allow their case to be heard, so that you get all the facts and everything else. Very difficult.
I mean, if you're a 5-year-old, right? I mean, and during the Trump administration, you had 2-year-old and 3-year-olds like sitting there with headphones and listening to a translator and looking at the judge, and the judge is like, What the fuck is going? Like, why am I talking to a toddler? Like, this is ridiculous right now, right? So I'm thinking that even that casual conversation you're talking about, if you're a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 8-year-old, 9-year-old, you're sitting there casually talking to an immigration guy, right, immigration officer, and you're like, my parents sent me here, we have a lot of violence, we have a lot of whatever, so let's say that these kids don't get granted an asylum. So what happens to these children? Like, do they take the kids and what, put them on a Greyhound bus and send them back to Mexico? Like, what happens to these children?
I mean, they can get deported if they lose their case. So that's the story. I don't know what the present protocol is in terms of making sure when they get back that they're in adult hands. I know that the present protocol at the moment is that when they come here under the kind of new Biden policies but old Obama policies, if
Mhm.
you will, that they locate families for them to stay with, or relatives if the relatives are here. There were issues before under Trump, because what happened was they dropped procedural safeguards because some of these relatives were undocumented, and ICE would just arrest these folks when they came to pick up their kids or their nephew or
Jesus.
whoever. So that was causing a lot of problems, but that's been dropped too by President Biden.
Okay.
So what they try to do is locate an adult family or foster family. Some of them end up in the foster system to
Uh-huh.
try to help them through all this. And it's not an easy problem to have. I'd be curious to look at how other countries handle these things too, if they're having uh, children as well. I don't know. I actually don't know the answer to that.
I mean, I don't know if you know this, but Pakistan is rated the second country in the world with the highest number of refugees. Like, Pakistan is notorious for, and not just notorious, but very welcoming when it comes to bringing in refugees. We're very big on that. Uh, But however, I know that Turkey was number one when Syrian refugees came in, and Germany was number two. Germany was very, very. They are German, but they are very proper. They just had everything figured out. They were like, hey, when they come in, the refugees come in, we already have these abandoned banks abandoned hotel rooms that have been turned into refugee camps. We're gonna give them X amount of euros per month. We're going to teach them how to speak German. We're going to help them get jobs. We're going to find out what their skills are. I mean, they had everything figured out because they're Germans. That's what Germans do. They're just very good at organization and, methodically coming up with stuff. But I look at this situation with the children and with the migrant workers. Robert, do you think, this is me playing devil's advocate? I mean, because, I talk to Middle Easterners and I talk to South Asians, and and the conversations that go down are, they're xenophobic. They are also, white people are not the only ones who carry racism. Plenty of brown people and other ethnicities carry racism against other ethnicities too. Minorities can also be racist against other minorities. And, when you listen to sometimes the conversations that go down in South Asian and Middle Eastern communities, they get really pissed off. They're like, wow, so now that immigration is being provided to these folks, there's now just going to be even a bigger influx of folks coming in. They're like, oh, fuck, they're just giving out green cards and citizenship. Fuck it. Let me just show up, have some kind of a sob story, and then they're just going to grant me an asylum.
You got to prove your case. I mean, basically our laws say that, you can win your case based on credible testimony, but they make it hard. If there's any document that's reasonably available, you have to produce it. If you say you were in jail, well, where's your criminal record from your country? So, where's those kind of things? So it has gotten a bit stricter in terms of the burden of proof under the Real ID Act, which you may be aware of for identification travel. Yes. It also made it stricter under that act for asylum cases in terms of documentation and reasonable things that a judge can look at that you ought to produce. So it's a bit hard, but yeah, I mean, people will make fake claims. There's no question about that. Fraud is going to happen. You rely on judges and immigration officers to ferret it out, and they do. They do ferret out fraud, and they identify it. And I've had plenty of judges and officers, basically, excuse my coarse language, but say, this is bullshit. Mm-hmm. So, and deny a case. It's, but nevertheless, people are going to get away with it. People marry an American citizen. There's fake marriages all the time. I mean, we have laws to prevent against it, and it's actually against the criminal law to do it.
Yeah.
People get away with it. People do it all the time.
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
So tough.
Yeah. I mean, it's, one of the conversations they were having in I forget what channel I was watching, and they were like, should we call this a crisis or should we call this a challenge? And I'm like, what difference does it make? What difference does it make what language you use? This is so stupid. Like, you have people who are escaping poverty. You have like coyotes who are trying to take advantage of their own folks. Like, we have bigger fish to fry. Like, call it challenge, crisis, problem, whatever you want to call it. People are suffering, period. Right?
Period. And again, it's how we react as a country. What do we stand for? Who do we want to be? Do we want to be our best selves as a country or not? Or do we want to say, do we want to be, we don't care about the suffering of other human beings and screw it. I mean, I think as someone who is Jewish and having had that history, that there has to be some compassion. I understand that there, you can only help people to the extent that you can help. And if it ends up hurting you, that could be a problem. But this is a country of amazing resource.
Yes.
We just enacted a $1.9 trillion COVID relief plan. I mean, you had people say, people might have said 2 or 3, oh, we just can't do it. Well, guess what? We do. And we had a huge recovery act under President Obama. People, oh, how can we spend this money? Well, we spent it. Automobile manufacturers were loaned all this money. They paid it all back. It's an amazing country. People still want to immigrate to this country.
That's right.
Because there is still a lot of good here.
That's
but
right.
I mean, to me, if we don't keep our spirit and keep who we stand for, I'm a big believer in, I'm not real religious in terms of organized religion. But I am a very spiritual person and believe in God and, believe in good karma, as we say here in Cali. So, I think our country has good karma. We have a lot of good karma. Think of World War II, the Marshall Plan, rebuilding Europe,
Yeah.
after it was destroyed, taking in a lot of refugees. Countries around the world looked at us as a beacon and as a
That's right.
leader. I
That's right.
think that karma has sustained us for a long, long time. I think if we're not careful, we can lose that karma.
Yeah.
I like that karma, by the way. I like being the good guys. I
Yeah.
like being part of a country that people look up to
Yeah.
and admire and respect because of how we treat people and who we are.
Yes.
Uh, I hope we can. I hope we can keep consistent with the spirit of who we are.
I agree.
And in that sense, I think Joe Biden has really, I didn't vote for him in the primary. I voted for Bernie, but I always liked Joe Biden. I always felt he was a good
He's a good
person.
Joe.
He's a good Joe, right? He's a good Uncle Joe. He's a good
Good.
politician.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think a good person for this particular time in history. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Andre here said the so-called reasonable Republicans voted against impeachment and voted against a relief bill for the people. Republicans as a voting bloc are hateful.
Yeah, overall, that's got to be the case. It's it's sad. It's very sad. It's
Yeah.
very sad to see 90% of the Republicans be Trumpians. It's a cult. It's the same, for my Romanian friends and colleagues, my opinion, and you can disagree. I think it's similar to Ceausescu in Romania. Horrible dictator. It was a cult. People had to bow, and same thing for Donald Trump. You got to go kiss his ring. Even his cabinet meetings, they all had to flatter him and this and that. That's very inconsistent with our American tradition.
Yeah.
The whole bashing of the press, so inconsistent with our tradition of respect for the press. Even if they criticize you,
Yes.
that's their role.
That's correct.
That is what they are supposed to do.
That's right.
And I'm a liberal, I'm a progressive, so I vary between CNN and MSNBC. But you know what? I see them criticize Joe Biden.
Yeah.
No, they're on him, and it's good.
Yes.
Robust debate. That's what we want.
Yep. Yeah. Robert. Go ahead. Sorry.
I've been watching a little bit of this CNN documentary on President Lincoln, and fascinating. Same thing President Obama did. He wanted a cabinet of equals and of critics of him. He wanted to test his own beliefs. He had opponents of his in his cabinet, President Lincoln.
Wow.
Says a lot of good things. Two of our best presidents, Lincoln and Obama, Illinois lawyers, just like yours truly.
Yours truly. I don't know if I've ever told you, but Abraham Lincoln is my favorite president. He is absolutely my favorite president. I absolutely love and admire the man. I know some may criticize me and say, well, he owned slaves and had, yes, you're right. And I couldn't possibly ever defend that. However, I think his struggles and how the amount of adversity he faced in his life and to become, one of the greatest president, if not the greatest president of this country, speaks volumes of his character and just like the things that you just mentioned. Gino here said misdemeanors should be purged upon entering into USA, in my humble opinion. What about you, Robert? What do you think?
Hard to say. Depends on what they are. I'm not sure what the point of the comment really was. I mean, I guess people, I know the place someone wants to start their new life, and maybe inconsequential things shouldn't be considered. Usually, our immigration laws don't really consider things like traffic tickets or small violations. They do consider things like shoplifting and things like that. So I'm not sure if the person was commenting on that. I guess for me, I think we ought to consider the whole person. Traffic tickets, maybe not. Shoplifting, maybe. I mean, someone can have a serious problem with kleptomania. And so I think there needs to be, and our laws do look at this
Yeah.
as to whether they think the person's going to be a repeat offender and cause problems here or not. And I think that's fair.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I would agree with that. It's funny, when I went to become a U.S. citizen, they asked me if I had any outstanding tickets or if I had gotten any tickets recently, and I said, yeah. I said I had a parking ticket, and they're like, "Did you pay it off? Do you have proof of it?" And thank God I had my checkbook with me, and I showed them the checkbook that I had cut them the check. They're like, "Okay, now you can go ahead and take the oath." So it was interesting that you just mentioned that to me. And I was like, wait, I almost didn't become a U.S. citizen if I didn't have the checkbook. It would really sucked. But Robert, I think I don't know. I think the Biden administration, just like you said, I think in the less than 60 days that he's been around, he's done a lot of really great things. I think Americans are breathing a lot easier. Americans are feeling a lot more hopeful. The crazy lunatics of the QAnon world have went down back into their dark holes and are trying to hide and have crawled back in wherever the fuck they came from. And the assholes who were part of the insurrection are being held accountable, for messing with the democratic process that has served us for hundreds of years.
Yeah, the other thing too is you see people and opponents being treated with respect. Uh,
Yes.
that's really important. Joe Biden meeting with the Republicans about their COVID relief proposal, really trying his best to incorporate some things to at least listen. I think, obviously at the end of the day, you didn't have any Republicans voting for it, but I think just and I hope there are areas where there will be some bipartisanship, such as infrastructure, and so I think that's important. I think people's actions toward other people are important. I have some disagreements with friends of mine, say, well, I disagree with Trump as the man, but I liked his policies and everything, and I don't like what he says and this and that. But President of the United States, they're not only a legislator or someone that makes decisions. They are the kind of spiritual leader of the country in a way of who
Yeah.
we are and everything else. So if you have somebody that's speaking down to women, that sends a message to people.
That's right.
If you have somebody not immediately condemning white supremacy, which every leader, Republican, Democrat, everybody, you watch the movie The Blues Brothers, big beefy Chicago cop, the fucking Nazis, excuse me.
Yeah.
That's the attitude of our country, and to have that reversed, by a president of the United States is truly heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Truly, it's not who we are,
Yep.
or maybe who we should be. I don't know.
Uh,
Uh, and I hope people understand that's not who we are. My great uncle fought in World War II.
mhm.
Many of the folks out there, their grandparents or whatever, people bled and died to get rid of the Nazis and their hateful ideology, in our country. And to see Camp Auschwitz, on a shirt, for someone that the president has encouraged all this and tells them that they're great and everything, that means something.
Mhm.
That enables and empowers these people that are running on emotion and hate, and that's a very dangerous kind of thing.
Yep.
Historically, if you look at the history of how horrible, ruthless tyrants rise, that's how they rise.
Yep. I agree. I agree, Robert. I agree. Well, just so you know, this Muslim is in all my Jewish friends' corner. So if they come for you, they also come for me. So I got my baseball bat ready, just so you know.
The
You know,
mighty powerful bat that you're
a
swinging.
mighty powerful bat. Robert, you were just mentioning about the $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill and the bipartisanship. And, I recently read this article that said, Biden had to go without the Republicans, just kind of overpass them and just go ahead and get the COVID relief package passed anyways. And the title read "Bipartisanship is Dead." Now that's pretty scary if you look at it, because you're just like, man, this country is built on that kind of balance, right? The moderates from both sides come together and have a conversation and agree and say, hey, I agree with this, or I don't agree with that, and let's work together. But the fact that that title read that bipartisanship is dead, meaning you're talking about the two parties that are living almost in extremes, or the extremes are running the parties. So it's terrifying. It's like, well, if we're not going to come together, so are we just going to be a divided United States? I mean, we're not going to be United States of America. We're going to be divided States of America.
Yeah, it's scary that something like that is on the horizon. It's been brewing a long time since Bill Clinton's presidency, and I think the jury's still out. We'll see what I think Biden morally felt that he had to do everything possible. He had to leave it all on the dance floor, so to speak, in
Mhm.
terms of COVID relief. It's an emergency. No matter what, I've got to do something. But in the process, he did listen to the Republicans. He treated them with respect. He met with them. We'll see what the emergency was the emergency. We'll see what else he's able to do. I'm a little skeptical, but I hope at least the more, quote, reasonable Republicans can agree on some of the things.
Yeah,
Maybe that won't happen. It's hard to say, I think, right now.
yeah,
I hope that Biden didn't poison the well, because we did have an emergency. And
yeah.
he truly believed that he had to do anything no matter what. Uh, but I think the jury's out. And I think if I were advising Biden, Biden's got a lot to do, but I think the next legislative priority has got, as far as passing something through Congress, would be something that there ought to be bipartisanship on, and there's no stress to get it done immediately, but
Mhm.
it should be done, kind of in the near future, which is, infrastructure.
Yeah.
And this will be a test of whether Biden is as good as he says he is, in terms of creating bipartisanship. Um,
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
see. We're just coming out of a presidency which has never been seen before, and a very scary situation and it's still looming in the background, right?
Right.
75 million people
That's right. That's right.
voted for somebody who is basically a cult leader.
That's right.
Um, so let
A dictator,
I
a dictator with a comb over.
sure.
The dictator with a comb over and a cheeseburger problem. And a cheeseburger addiction.
Yeah, yeah.
James here said, all right, we're going to start wrapping up. We're going to wrap up, Robert. But James here said it was shocking to see how many neo-Nazis and white supremacists there are. At least we are aware of their presence now. I agree.
Yeah, I've been saying this. I never would have thought that. I never ever would have thought it. I mean, we knew we were there.
Mhm.
I thought maybe it's 10% of all Republicans, but it's, I think, more like at minimum of 35 to 45% of of the Republicans and folks who voted for Trump. So it's sad. It's very, very sad. We have serious socioeconomic disparity between white and brown people in this country, and it needs to be addressed, and in terms of what's causing it and how to remedy it and what's happened historically. What can we do about it? Because remedying it benefits everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, then you have people rising based on talent and smarts and everything else. Everybody having some equal opportunity to get that, rather than being, brought up in a ghetto or a bad area where you don't have the kind of connections that I had growing up in a nice Jewish suburb.
Sure.
Even though my mom was a single mom and we were poor, to at least have opportunity, which is what we had.
That's right.
Same guy growing up on the south side of Chicago did not have, could have had my same intelligence as me and ability, but not the kind of opportunity for sure.
That's right. Robert, and thank you. And I think that's a great point to close this conversation out. Opportunities matter, right? I mean, that's why this whole conversation that's taking place in Hollywood about representation. Yeah, I mean, in essence what they're saying is representation, meaning opportunities. That's what they're referring to, really. If you look at the, you're saying, hey, my, somebody like me getting up on stage, or somebody like me showing up on TV matters, right? There are children watching this, and they're like, this person, none of these people look like me. I don't know, do I even belong here? Am I in the wrong place? Like, where the hell am I?
Well, yeah, and we want the little girl who's watching you right now saying, wow, this person looks like me, and my mom is Pakistani, and my dad's a Jewish lawyer, whatever, and I can grow up and be either one of those guys or some combination thereof, or whatever. And that way, the best people, we get the best people in the society, in the country, rising up, because they've got the connections, important thing, connections.
Yes.
And opportunity and things like that. We want to make that, it's never going to be completely level. I mean, I think I guess never is a harsh word, but for a long time at least. And, but we want to make it as level as we're able, because it benefits the whole country. And that's what policy is about. What benefits the country as a whole.
Right. Agreed. Robert Perkins, always a pleasure, my friend. Do you want people to follow you? If people want to use your immigration services, where can they go to follow you or find
immigrationprofessor.com, my website. They can follow me on my website. We do immigration law all over the world. I'm a licensed Illinois lawyer, but I live in Los Angeles and enjoy our beautiful weather. So thanks for the plug. I appreciate it. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Robert Perkins. I adore you. Thank you very much.
Adore you back.
That was the awesome Robert Perkins. I know you guys enjoyed that conversation. I know I definitely did. James said, thanks, Mona and Robert. Informative chat. Thank you very much, James. And thank you to everyone who tuned in today. You guys, I will be back tomorrow with a brand new guest. If you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do. You can go to youtube.com/Mona Shaikh Comedian. And you can also follow me on TikTok and Facebook at same. And also on Instagram and Twitter at Mona's Comedy. I am getting so close to my 1,000 subscribers, and I'm going to become monetized. So if you guys can go ahead and subscribe to my channel, that would mean a lot. Or also even share this video and share my channel on your social media. That would mean the world to me. You guys, I appreciate all your love and support. Have a good evening. Wear your mask. Stay safe.